We're back for another episode of the Jersey Boys podcast. This week, again, we have Mike from Mike's Picks. Mike, how you doing?
Doing well, Steven. Great to be here this evening. Excited for this Calgary card coming up on Saturday. Should be a good one.
Should be a good one. As you said off air, it kind of starts off with a stinker, so I guess we'll talk about the stinker first. But this is the UFC on Fox 30, Poirier versus Alvarez 2. We kind of got cheated that first fight. Was a great fight for a round and a half, and kind of got cheated towards the end. So I'm sure you'll have an opinion on that. But let's get right into this first fight. We have Devin Powell and Alvaro Herrera. Powell is 8.4K. Herrera is 7.8K. Now, the inside the distance props are out, and it looks like this fight is going to finish. Powell is 30. They're both, well, no, Powell's 30 years old. They're both 6 feet, 74-inch reach. Trying to grab for straws here because there's just not a lot of information. And even in the fights, there's not a lot to go on in these fights. Powell's 0-2 in the UFC, both decision losses. I believe one of the losses was to Drakkar Klose, where he kind of got manhandled. Herrera is 1-2 in the UFC. His one win was against a guy named Vernon Ramos. I didn't even go back and look at the fight because the guy's not in the UFC anymore. He did knock him out.
And
the other
it was a 30-second
fights,
finish.
It was a
quick finish.
So there's a reason that guy's not in the UFC anymore. And his 2 losses were by sub. So Devin Powell, I believe, is a BJJ black belt. I can't confirm that. Alvaro Herrera, again, I guess you can say that he has knockout power. He did knock a UFC fighter out. Powell is not very good, but he has lasted in his other fights to decision. So I really don't know where to go here. I can't really give great advice. All I can say is if a guy's been sub twice and the other guy's a BJJ black belt, I would think that Powell would want to get him down, although when you look at his history, he doesn't have any takedowns. So it's very difficult to give you an educated opinion here. So, Mike, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, watching the tape, I saw Herrera almost went the distance with Vicente Luque. Again, this is a low-level fight. These guys are barely hanging on, but it is relevant for a Draftkings. At 8,400, there should be a finish in this fight. When I watch the tape, Devin Powell looks like a human punching bag out there. Except even in the Horcher fight, he never gave up on himself, and that counts for something. So you're going to have to put him out to finish him, to end the night for him. Herrera, he doesn't offer much for 77 or 7,800. My take on this fight is that it should end in the distance. I honestly feel comfortable just flipping a coin. It may be worth picking both sides of this fight in DraftKings. I am going to avoid this in cash, but I would not be surprised if this is on an optimal lineup. I got to be honest. Some weird shit happens in these fights, and these guys tap. I mean, did you see the Rinaldi fight against Herrera? It was a Von Flue show. Yeah,
I saw the finish, but I didn't watch the whole fight.
Yeah, Herrera gets put in pretty bad positions, and he's susceptible to tapping quickly. You look at 9-5 record. I'm not sold on this fight. I would prefer to move on to the next one. This is just not my cup of tea. But what are you going to do?
No, I really don't have a great read on it, and that's why I kind of threw it to you quick here.
Yeah, no problem.
And again, even if you don't have a good read on one guy, it kind of throws off your read on the other guy because you don't have a level of competition that you're comfortable. I'm comfortable with, you mentioned Vicente Luque, and I mentioned Drakkar Klose. I'm comfortable with those guys, but I don't think they offered much resistance for most of that fight. It was kind of a one-sided. Each round was kind of one-sided, in my opinion.
Right, and Powell came in through looking for a fight, right? And he's been beaten to a pulp, but somehow he survives. And he had that was not a split decision loss to Horcher. He looked like he lost that fight convincingly. So surprisingly, these guys have jobs in the UFC. I have no idea how. But
Well, I think one of them is going to lose a job after this fight.
yeah.
You know. All right, let's move on then.
Great.
So again, I think we're agreeing GPP fight. And again, I agree with you. Optimal lineup. In my write-up, I actually put that this is going to be a GPP fight.
I wouldn't be surprised if Powell ends up surviving and getting a late sub. I'll say that's how I see it playing out.
Okay. Next fight, we have Randa Marcos at 7.7K and Nina Ansaroff at 8.5K. If you just look at their logs, Marcos has a couple of decent wins to her credit. She beat Tisha Torres early, I think in like 2014. But if you look at her more recently, she looks like she really struggles to really mount a striking attack. And I think that one of the things that I observed on tape is just Ansaroff is just getting better. Every time out there, she's just getting better. I was really impressed against Angela Hill.
I thought see that too.
Yeah, I thought Angela Hill was going to win that one. I think I was on her too on Draftkings. But Marcos, I think a lot of times they say as MMA evolves, you have people who just get better, and some people are kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of like a Ronda Rousey. You know what I mean? Her style was very good, and then as it evolved, everyone else kind of got better and brought more to their game, and her game just kind of leveled off. And I think that's where Marcos is right now. She doesn't have great striking skills, and I think Ansaroff is just better on the feet. And I don't know how well she's going to be able to get her down. Ansaroff kind of seems pretty steady, stuffing takedowns. So I like Ansaroff here. I like a decision. So you can play her in cash. I don't think I'm going to touch this in GPP. I'm probably only going to play 3 or 4 GPP lineups, but I'm not going to touch it. But Mike, what do you think about this one?
Well, to be honest, Ansaroff is a little expensive as far as I'm concerned for 8,700. You're probably not going to get takedowns from her against Marcos. I don't expect a finish in this fight, so I don't know where she's going to get all these points to pay off that 8,700 price tag. But on the other side of the coin, you have Marcos priced at 7,700. We know who she is. I thought she beat Grasso. We know who Grasso is at this stage in her career. The way I see this fight playing out, there is Amanda Nunes. I do believe that she does help motivate her, and she is around great teammates. I could see this fight going the distance, and Ansaroff is my pick, but Marcos may take Ansaroff down, and the clock is going to tick, and I don't see her with a great get-up game. So she could be on bottom for a significant amount of time. It's just something to consider here. So I'm going to avoid playing her in cash, Ansaroff, but I do see her coming out with a victory, just peppering Marcos with strikes, keeping her distance, and trying to avoid the takedowns if at all possible. We'll see. I mean, there are no certainties in this sport. I've learned that, and
100%.
So my preferred play. See, you're not getting a lot of bang for your buck at 7,700 from Marcos. I would expect. I don't expect her to win, but tough fight. I'm going to go with Ansaroff by decision, but not a high-scoring fight. That's my take.
The other thing, Mike, when you first said it, Ansaroff is 8.5K. I just looked it up on DraftKings because you said 8.7, and she is 8.5K.
Okay.
I wrote it down wrong, but yeah.
I appreciate the correction.
Mixing her up with Caitlin. I think Caitlin is 8.7.
All right.
Now, let's just talk about, you mentioned, sparring partners and things like that. Nina, I believe, is now at ATT. Is she at ATT with Amanda?
Yes.
Now, Joanna is at ATT.
I believe so.
And then Tisha Torres, who was at ATT, went out to Denver, and she's now training with Rose because of them both obviously fighting each other.
That's the word on the street.
Okay, so if I'm putting all that together, then you would have to think that Nina has some pretty good sparring partners between if she does spar with Amanda, which I would assume she may at some point. But you also have girls like Joanna in the room and Tisha up until this last camp. So she's around some high level girls as sparring partners. Marcos, I believe, is Canadian, right? So I don't know if she's
Correct.
at TriStar. I don't know who she trains with up there, but again, I think that has a lot to do with why Nina is has shown improved striking, especially against Angela Hill. I was very impressed against Angela Hill. But let's move on here. Here's my upset special, Mike. I don't know if you feel the same way. Dustin Ortiz is 7.2K, and Matthias Nicolau is 9K. Nicolau and his fight, if you want to watch a beating, watch his fight versus Louis Smolka. I actually tweeted it out yesterday. He dropped Louis Smolka 3 times in that first round. I don't know what Smolka was trying to do. I don't know what his game plan is, but Nicolau's left hook is legit. Kept dropping him. And the one time he dropped him, he actually hit the glove and he dropped him. Now I know Smolka at the time was ranked number 13. Obviously, he's not number 13. He's not that good. But Nicolau's very quick, good movement, likes to exchange in the pocket.
Only 25 years old.
Only 25 years old. He did have a USADA suspension, though, right?
Yes.
For the Smolka fight. I think that was it a 6 month or an 8 month? I forget how long it was.
1 year suspension.
It was a 1 year. And again, he trains at the famous gym down in Brazil, Nova União. So again, everything is looking good. And a lot of those guys, they tend to, we'll talk about Jose Aldo later, but a lot of those guys tend to fade later in their career. But earlier in their career, because of that hard sparring, they're really ready to fight this kind of competition. Now, Dustin Ortiz, on the other hand, I really liked him in previous fights. If you go back and watch that fight against Pantoja, maybe, it was a split decision. All 3 judges had it 29-28. Pantoja definitely won the first round. He basically had his back the entire round. Ortiz was lucky to get out of that round, but he wound up winning the next 2 rounds. I just really like Ortiz wrestling. I like the matchup. Styles make matchups, and I like the matchup for Ortiz. I think that he can use his kicks, which I think for Nicolau, who was a former amateur boxer, I think those will be effective. And I think the takedowns will be effective if he can get him down to the ground. So I think those are his keys to victory. The low kicks, get in the clinch, possible takedowns, and kind of ground out a three-round decision. But Mike, agree, disagree?
I actually agree with you on this one. Okay. Dustin Ortiz is a wily veteran, 29 years old. He's actually a plus 165 underdog here. And the line was pretty wide. At one point, he was, I believe, Nicolau was up to minus 270, and the line had been bouncing around. Ortiz did win that fight over Pantoja. He did knock out Sandoval. But what impressed me when he was fighting Brandon Moreno, he was controlling that fight. He was winning that fight. And a lot of people had Moreno. They were holding him in high regard. And I was impressed with Ortiz's performance there. I've seen Ortiz fight live, and he is another guy. You're going to get a grade A effort out of him from start to finish. He does go for takedowns. He is looking to advance position. He does have some pop in his hands. Nicolau, he is a hot prospect, 13-2 record. Before his USADA suspension, he fought John Moraga in 2016 and won that fight. So he's, again, that was when he was 23 years old. So this kid is progressing. He's a dynamic striker. He has a ground game. It should be an action-packed fight. Everyone out there is, not everyone out there, but a lot of people I would suspect are going to be stacking the main event. But if you're not stacking the main event, this may be a fight to look at. But my pick in this fight, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Ortiz pulls off the upset. And he's priced at 70, let's see, 7,200?
7.2K, I believe. Yeah, I actually wrote over the number.
Yeah, 7,200. So, I mean, you look at those punts down low, and you got to think who could survive and put up points. Ortiz could, Torres could. When we get to Arnett and Johnson, I don't see them surviving, but we'll see. So I'm going with Ortiz.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in GPPs are not going to be on Ortiz because they're going to play Eddie Alvarez. I mean, some may play Ortiz, but I think he's going to be very popular in cash. But you make a great point about that. I'm actually stacking the main event in my cash lineup that I'm using right now. So again, is there a need to go Ortiz if you're already stacking with Alvarez? I don't think you need to. And the other thing with Ortiz too, he's lost 4 decisions. The only time he got finished was by Moreno in that sub in the UFC. He's 7-5 in the UFC. So if you're talking about that, you can more or less expect him to be in there for 3 rounds because again, he can always go to his wrestling game, which got him out of trouble with the Pantoja fight. Pantoja beat Brandon Moreno real bad too.
Yeah, that was impressive.
That was like 2 months ago, I believe. So Mike, we'll get to this next fight. I'm gonna eventually let you start with one of these fights, but I have like strong leans on a lot of them, so I'm just gonna go with this one.
Okay.
But we got Alexis Davis at 7.5K and Caitlin Chudigan at 8.7K. And again, I'm from Jersey. Caitlin grew up, I believe, in Pennsylvania, just like Eddie Alvarez, but she trains out of Jersey, just like Eddie Alvarez does. And she's all over the place. I believe she lives down in Jersey City right now, but she started training at an MMA facility in Kenilworth. But I know she's training now because I see her in some pictures with the group like Eddie Alvarez and Baby K, Corey Anderson, who won last week, Frankie Edgar. So she's training with some high level guys with Mark Henry, Almeida, for BJJ, and she could be undefeated. She could very well have won that Carmouche fight. She could be 11-0 right now. She actually beat Sajara Eubanks back earlier in her career, and she's really a natural 125er. So again, when it comes to striking volume, she's going to throw plenty of punches. The fight against Maria Borello, which is the one that I did watch, Borello was number 9, ranked 9th at 125. She got a lot of criticism for throwing a lot of jabs that didn't hit anything, just kind of throwing jabs into the air. I don't know if that's the way that she kind of gauges distance. A lot of people will put their hand out to gauge distance. I think she kind of just throws air jabs to gauge just distance.
You never know with Fight Metric also what they're going to count these days.
Well, you don't know Fight Metric, and you also don't know how the judges are going to score it. They see someone being very active, and she's going to be active.
And also, she grunts. She grunts a lot when she throws these punches.
She does do that also. And again, when you're talking about someone like Alexis Davis, you watch her fight. She's very hittable. I mean, her head she throws a punch and then takes 2 back to the head. If she can't get a takedown in the round and hold her down, I just don't see how she's going to win the round. So I feel like I have a very clear path to victory for Chudigan. I feel like there is a path to victory for Alexis Davis. It's going to be to get a takedown and kind of hold her down. But Chudigan has shown that she can get up from those takedowns. Even the fight that she lost against Carmouche, she was taken down 4 times, but for the most part, she threatened the triangle late in that fight. She threw more punches from the bottom. It was one of those fights where if you're really looking at it and you see who's more active, I know Carmouche was on the top, but Chudigan was very active from the bottom in rounds 2 and 3. So there's a path for both of these girls to win this fight. I just think Chudigan's going to be able to keep it on the feet, fight off Alexis Davis, and just outstrike her for the win. But Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, this card, the first few fights, I mean, besides the Ortiz fight, it's a tough start to it. But Caitlin Chukagan, she, a lot of people refer to her as Holly Holm Light. She has some of the same characteristics, but she she's a high output striker, but most of the strikes don't end up hitting her opponent. She does it to gauge distance, and she doesn't like to engage. It felt like I was watching someone at a jazzercise class practicing their strikes when I watched tape on her, and tough to watch. Alexis Davis has a solid ground game. That win over Carmouche that they gave her, I thought that was a fluke victory. The Alexis
I'll go
Davis.
a step further. I thought both fights should have went the other way. I thought,
yeah, the Dandois fight. I was about to say the same thing. Mm-hmm.
But even the Caitlin fight, I thought Caitlin should have beat Carmouche, and I thought Carmouche should have beat Davis.
Yeah.
Whereas both decisions went the other way. But I'm sorry to cut you off.
No. I agree with you. The Dandois Alexis Davis fight, I thought that should have went the other way. And then also Alexis Davis, her first fight after giving birth, she got subbed by Sarah McMahon, and that was something that we saw that coming. I think the fight was within 9 months or so after giving birth, which was an impressive turnaround just to get into the cage after that. But I'll be honest, I'm probably going to avoid this fight in DraftKings unless the only Alexis Davis, if this fight ends up getting to the ground, the thing is I don't see how Chookagian would be. I don't see how she would let it happen. Man, that's tough. I'm going with a split decision here. Either Alexis, I'm waffling here, so I apologize.
Well,
but
no, I'll even go a step further to throw something else out there.
Let's hear it.
I would love to see Caitlin take Alexis Davis down, because not for nothing, you just mentioned the Sarah McMahon fight.
She's great off her back. Alexis Davis. Yeah, she has a pretty high level jiu-jitsu game. But if she wants to go into her guard, let's see. I'd like to see Chookagian get down there, but I don't know if she will. She just seems almost averse to the grappling game.
Yeah, doing anything physical. No, I mean, I've seen Sarah McMahon throw Alexis Davis down and submit her. I saw Ronda Rousey beat her in 19 seconds. So
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Well, that's why we're talking here on the podcast, right? Differences, make the world go round. So,
but you also don't want to lose a fight just because of a takedown. You know what I mean? I feel like Caitlin has lost fights just because of the takedown. So why not just engage that, take her down, and win around that way? You know what I mean? Maybe strike for 3 minutes and then try to take her down. What's the worst thing that happens? You're going to get taken down anyway if, in a scramble.
Yeah. This fight, though, I see Chookagian seems averse to even getting in a clinch. So I could see Chookagian winning just by peppering Davis and trying to keep distance. But if Davis does want to win this fight or has any shot at it, she's gotta close the distance. So we'll see.
And again,
that's
why
they make the fight.
Yeah, and I don't really think that I'm going to be playing it in cash or GPP. So
what prices do we have here for Chookagian?
She's 8.7K. Yeah, I think that's the one that you mixed up before. Okay. But again, I think it's the same reason. I don't know how she pays off 8.7 or 8.5K.
I see a lot of people on Twitter picking Chookagian.
I like her to win. I like her. I like the better. If you can get her like minus 140, I like the better and win. But that's about it. So, Mike, let's get into let's get into this next fight. And I'm going to let you start it off because I have a pretty strong take on this. But this is John McDessie at 8.9K, real high price again for him, in my opinion. And Ross Pearson is 7.3K. So where are you going with this fight?
Well, John McDessie is coming off of a win over a vegan Abel Trujillo. He also, about a year and a half prior to that, took that kick from Venata. Ross Pearson, he is coming off of a victory. He beat Hirota.
Mm-hmm.
And in that fight, it seems like Ross Pearson, he's been the same fighter for the past 10 years. We know exactly who he is. His losses to Jorge Masvidal and Will Brooks, you could see he has no plan B when he's fighting. He's going to be at a disadvantage against McDessie, who will try to keep the distance. And I see him being just the faster fighter, winning a striking battle. I'm picking McDessie here. What's his price?
He's 8.9K. Man,
That's
8.9K.
That's a high price to pay.
And this fight also, Mike, is favored to go to decision.
Yeah, I could see that happening too. I could see McDessie winning a decision. I want to know if is Pearson going to come out and try and push a pace? Who's gonna dictate the pace of this fight? Who do you think will dictate the pace?
I think Pearson's going to dictate the pace because I think McDessie is very comfortable at range. And I think Pearson, if you look at Pearson's fight, and I actually put this out on Twitter, Pearson was in the middle of a 4-fight losing streak. And you mentioned the fight with Hirota. So yeah. if you go back and you look at the fight with Dan Hooker, Pearson was really trying to pressure Dan Hooker. And that's what got himself knocked out.
He got kneed in the face, right?
Knee. Yeah, and again, so the next fight you watch against Hirota, and you're like, wait a minute, this guy was just pressuring Dan Hooker, and you're not going to pressure Hirota, who's basically fighting, moving backwards off his back foot and keeping pace. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So what I noticed in Pearson's fights is he's just looking to try to win a fight. He'll do whatever he's got to do to win a fight. And this fight, it's like, all right, I'm gonna push the pace. Well, that didn't work. So now the next fight he comes out and it's like, well, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna try to lean back and counterpunch. And again, that's why he won the fight, because Hirota just doesn't throw enough. And Pearson literally had 63 total strikes landed. So he won. I don't even know how many Draftkings points he had. I didn't look that up. But I noticed at the end of the fight he had 63 strikes landed. He didn't have any takedowns. So, what are we going to score here?
McDessie is he can be a counter striker as well, and he has better head movement. He can win a point striking battle. Who's your pick in this fight?
I'm going McDessie. I actually bet it.
Okay, all right.
I like McDessie. I like the bet. I hate the price on DraftKings.
Yeah, I agree with that. Pearson's, even at this stage in his career, he's a tough out. But when you're playing DraftKings, you also need to take into consideration how much damage an opponent is willing to take. If you have a person who's a punching bag out there and they take a lot of punishment, that's a lot of DraftKings points. Yeah,
that's true. I don't know. I mean, Pearson's a boxer. McDessie has those good inside kicks. He can really, eat up his legs, good head movement. Doesn't take a lot of – he's really good striking defense. And again, he's 2-1 in his last 3 fights. Both of these guys have a lot of UFC experience. I just think McDessie's going to get it done with the striking.
Yeah, Pearson, there's so many miles on his odometer too. As I'm looking through this card, there are a bunch of fighters who are on the fringe. Pearson could be getting a pink slip after this fight as well.
Well, again, Mike, if you look at it, last week we had a card where I believe there were like 5 guys making their UFC debut. I didn't go back and look, but everybody here has UFC fights. There's not one guy making their debut.
Excellent.
So we have something to go by. And if we get into this next fight here, I think it's very obvious too where the GPP spots are and where the stay away spots are. We've just gone over 4 or 5 fights here. And there's only really one fight that's a GPP spot. It was the first fight. And for the most part, if you think about it, we don't really know much about those guys. You know what I mean? We're just
Mm-hmm.
assuming that someone's going to finish it. But I'm very sure that this next fight is going to finish. I'm going to screw up this guy's name. Gatsamurad Antiglulov versus Ian Kutalaba. I don't know if I said Antigolov's first name right, but he's 8.6K. Kutalaba is 7.6K. Now, I know Kutalaba had a USADA violation. I believe he hasn't fought in about 18 months. Do you know anything about that?
Right. Yes, that's correct. He is coming off of the destruction of Luis Henrique da Silva, and he is a very aggressive fighter. A lot of people in the Twitter universe see Kutalaba marching towards Antigolov and Antigolov taking him down, and then Kutalaba just getting stuck on bottom and probably subbed out. But if Kutalaba cracks him, which he's been able to do in other fights, that this is a GPP. This has GPP written all over it. Yes, I agree with you.
I totally agree with that. And again, go ahead, Mike. No, I don't want to cut you off.
For 8.6K, you're getting a lot of value with Antigolov also. I mean, he has the ability to get takedowns. If you look at his track record, he has a number of submissions. And Kutalaba has a bunch of knockouts. And Kutalaba, I mean, he throws punches in bunches. So if those connect, you've got lots of DraftKings points headed your way. But, you know, this is a tough fight, too. If it's a closely lined fight as well. Antigolov is a minus 155 favorite. Kutalaba plus 135. What do you have the odds of this finishing within the distance here? If not, I can pull them up right now.
Yeah, you may want to pull it up. I'm just going off the top of my head. I didn't write them down. I believe minus 170 though.
What's your take on this fight?
Everything you said, I totally agree with. I think Kutalaba, if you look at his reach, he has a 75-inch reach, so he's going to have a 4.5-inch reach advantage.
Fight doesn't go the distance, minus 300.
Oh, wow, it's really up there. I don't think it was up there that much earlier in the week. I think the USADA violation is a big thing. You know, his nickname is the Hulk, and again, you do feel like the Hulk when you're on some good stuff. So I don't know exactly what he was taking, but I know it was an 18-month violation from what I heard. And for the most part, Antigulov has won 14 straight fights. His two fights in the UFC have been subs. He's finished 6 straight fights. And he's one of those guys from Dagestan, Russia that, you know, for the most part, he's got that combat Samba background. He's a grappler. He uses his punches. He does have some knockouts, but he just uses his punches to basically get in on your body to then drag you down. So I think Kutalaba is a GPP play. For the most part, I watched 2 fights. I watched the Jared Cannonier fight, and I basically wrote down he gasses in 7 minutes. Hip toss takedown, knees in the clinch, Greco-Roman wrestler, throws heavy punches, but he gassed at 7 minutes. Against Misha Serkinov, he gassed in the second round also. So I just don't see Kutalaba being able to get a decision. So if you want to play Kutalaba or bet him by knockout. I don't think he's going to sub Antigulov. His only path to victory is to get that knockout. It's possible, but I think if Antigulov gets onto his hips early and gets that single leg takedown, which is what he's known for, very strong legs, heavy wrestling, punches his way inside, chain wrestling. I mean, these are all the things that I wrote down. I watched the Christensen fight, and I've watched the Lima fight. So I think we're on the same path here. I think it's a GPP fight. I like Antigulov, and I actually bet him too.
I could see Antigolov being in a lot of cash lineups.
He's actually in my cash lineup also.
Yeah.
But you know, take it for what it's worth. This is the 6th fight, Mike, that we just broke down, and I think that's the first fight we're comfortable saying, you know, is a GPP fight going to finish?
Yep. And we got 13 fights on this card.
Yeah, we got 13, but I don't think there's many that we're saying are going to finish, though. I could be wrong. Now, this next fight could finish. I kind of think we're going to see a decision here, but this is Islam Makhachev and Cajun Johnson. Watched a few fights with these guys. Islam was actually by Khabib's side over at UFC 223. So when we were interviewing Khabib, because I had the press credentials there, he was right to the side of him the whole time. I believe they're first cousins, and they basically train together. They're with each other all the time. So this is another guy, Sambo fighter from Dagestan, Russia. The one concern that I saw, and I believe it was in the Nick Lentz fight, Islam has a tendency to put his head down when he goes for takedowns. Nick Lenz grabbed his neck a few times. That's the only way I see Cajun Johnson being able to get a win here is maybe if he can grab a sub. Cajun Johnson does train a TriStar with Faraz Zahabi. Does have some experience on the ground, but in terms of his striking, he's a low volume striker. So I think Islam's going to be the better striker. I think Islam's going to go after Cajun once he catches him, because Cajun's going to be running around like a madman. But once he's able to catch him, if he's able to ground him early, he's just going to drain him out. Cajun, again, he has a 5-inch reach advantage. Islam is 8 years younger. I just see a decision fight here.
What do you think of his $9,600 price tag?
I think you could play it in cash. I mean, again, I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him.
A minus 700 favorite, yeah.
But what are the props for it to finish?
Pay that off.
What are the props for it to finish, Mike?
Let's check that out. And I think we were both at the fight when Islam took on Lentz. That happened in Jersey.
Was that in Jersey? That was at UFC Atlantic City?
Yes. Not at Atlantic City. It was actually at the Barclays Center.
It was at the Barclays. Yes, I was at that fight.
Fight doesn't go to a decision plus 155.
The amazing thing, that's what I can tell you about that fight. Yeah, I don't even remember being at that fight. That card was pretty bad.
Yeah. Fight goes to a decision minus 185. So bookies say it does go to its decision.
Yeah, and again at 9.6K,
so
I don't know how you can get. Yeah, he's not going to get that many takedowns.
People
and again,
will be avoiding
I'm sorry, we're cutting each other off. Cajun doesn't engage much. You know what I mean? He's kind of a strike, switches stances, backs away, strikes, switches stances, backs away. So he doesn't engage all that much. So I don't see Islam being able to score that highly.
And this is another fighter, Cajun Johnson, who is he's staring at a pink slip. This is the third or fourth fighter who may get their walking papers.
And again, maybe for more than one reason, he's very involved with Project Spearhead also, right?
Yep.
Dana isn't a big fan of those people.
But I agree with you on the Islam pick, obviously minus 700. You know, he's a virtual lock. He may secure multiple takedowns. That's his path to victory is just being on top of Johnson at some point. He will. I suspect he'll have a few slam takedowns. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a suplex. And I want to see an action fight, but Johnson's, you're right, he's going to be trying to avoid engaging at all costs. He knows. He's got to know that that's his only path to victory. But from a DraftKings perspective, I'm curious to see what type of ownership levels we'll have in cash lineups and also in tournaments. What's your take on that? What do you think? At 60, what is Johnson 6,600?
6.6K, yeah.
Holy cow! So I mean, I don't see if Johnson survives. It may be a stars and scrubs week for some people, but how could you play a plus 500 underdog in your cash lineups?
And again, he does have a path to victory. You know, if he can snatch his neck, you know, he can kind of grab a guillotine finish there. Cajun has long arms. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. So
he's a desperate fighter.
Yeah, and it's not inconceivable that he can't get that finish. Islam puts his head down. It's happened before. Nick Lenz almost caught him a couple times, but I don't know. I mean, if I'm going to spend that much money, we can get right into the next fight because I think
Sure.
Duatu, who's 9.4K, has a better chance at a finish. So if you're going to spend up and spend the money, I think this fight was tailor made for Duatu. He was 7-0-1 coming into the UFC,
And he's
and
coming off of
Danny,
a knockout, right? Coming
yeah,
off of a knockout loss.
Well, it was actually a sub, right? Because
Or
he
yeah,
got
you're
knocked
right.
down and then guillotine got choked out. But Danny Henry had a 4-inch, height advantage. Austin Arnett has a 4-inch height advantage also. So I don't know if that was the stylistic matchup that was, gave Dawadi problems, but Arnett is the same kind of guy. Although Arnett is 0-2 in the UFC. I remember watching. I didn't watch the Brandon Davis fight live. I watched it on tape delay when I was doing research. But the Corey Sandhagen fight, I believe that was on the Brunson card when he fought Jacare in Charlotte, if my memory serves me right. But Sandhagen came in on like a week notice. He had just knocked the guy out a week earlier, came in and then knocked out Arnett. And I was in shock. Like I'm pretty sure most people in DraftKings were on Arnett. They're like, "There's no way this guy's coming in and knocking him out."
He got finished by body shots.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just don't think Arnett is very good. Brandon Davis put a clinic on him.
It's amazing how these fighters come in with, he's got a 15-3 record, and but he looks like crap when you watch the tape. And man, Duatu, I was looking at some of his kickboxing fights, and he actually, as an amateur, he was 42-4 as an amateur kickboxer, and then went 9-0 as a pro kickboxer. But mixed martial arts is another story. He did get subbed out and came in with a lot of hype. I did watch some pre-fight interviews with Duatu, and a couple of things. I mean, I guess it's good to, in some respects, have some nerves. And he was talking about just trying to block everything out right now. That a lot of family and friends are trying to hit him up for tickets, and he told them just go to UFC.com or Ticketmaster. That he blamed his previous loss on some nagging injuries and that he didn't have a good training camp. It's not a good feeling when you hear people who don't own their losses or blame it on extenuating circumstances. That being said, this, you're right, looks like a tailor-made matchup for Duatu. Arnett has virtually no head movement, and he's a punching bag that you need if you're going to have a high score for DraftKings if you're selecting their opponent. So I'm surprised that Duatu's a -370 favorite. I actually think he deserves to be a higher favorite. But then his sub loss is baked into the odds, right?
Yes, definitely.
They know that he's coming off of a loss, so there may be some value on Duatu, even though he's at -370. But from a DraftKings perspective, he's 9,400 on DraftKings.
9,400, and again, in his 7 wins, 6 of them finished.
Yeah.
So, and Arnett's been finished.
Might be a good play.
Yeah, and Arnett's been finished. And again, you mentioned before, to me, his striking looks slow. Against Sandhagen, Arnett's striking and against Brandon Davis. And again, Brandon Davis is a very good striker. He's lost matches in the UFC really because of the takedowns and stuff. But yeah, I think Duatu's. I think this is tailor made. Plus, he's from Calgary. This fight card is in Calgary.
Yes,
there's a lot of guy. Obviously a lot of Canadian fighters, but
McDessie's also from Canada.
Yes,
and Marcos.
Marcos, and this next fight, who I actually have a very strong lean on, Jordan Mean. Jordan Mean is 8.1K. He's from Alberta, Canada, and I believe that's local to Calgary. Alex Morono is 8.1K. Mike, I'm going to throw it right to you because I don't want to sway
Sure.
anything that you're going to say right now, but I have a pretty strong lean here. So what do you think?
Okay. Okay. So Alex Morono, he defeated Josh Berkman recently, and before that, I remember him fighting Nico Price, and he was actually getting the better of the striking exchanges with Nico Price until he was finished at the end of the round. Um, he's much shorter than Jordan Mean. He is uh, he doesn't put punches together. Um, he does have a great ground game, but I haven't seen him wrestle and get takedowns. Jordan Mean, gosh, I've been watching him for many years, basically watching him grow up. And it blows my mind that he's only 28 years old. Morono's 27. Um, Jordan Mean, well rounded. He, his first rounds are great. Um, my take is that he will be super motivated for this being in his hometown. That I can trust him for 3 rounds if it takes that long. I I, I do have a play on Jordan Mean, and at minus 115 currently, um, I think he's a good play. And for 8,100 on DraftKings, both of these guys are 8,100. Means my pick, though, I've heard people say about Morono that he doesn't possess power, but I've seen him throw with heavy hands, and don't count him out. That's all I have to say. What's your take on it?
I love Jordan Mean here. So I'm happy that you said that you have a play on him because that makes me feel a lot better. I just think Jordan Mean is very well rounded. I think he can take this fight anywhere he wants.
His
Um,
42 professional fights. It's incredible at
and
28 years old.
and again, that worries me. But by the same token, he did take a 2 year. He kind of retired. I don't know. He called it a retirement, but I don't know if he really meant he was retiring for good. He was taking time away from fighting, but I believe he
Yeah.
took like 2 year layoff. He fought Rory McDonald. I was shocked when I saw this in Tapology. He fought Rory McDonald at 16 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and
They were
and
both that age. It's
yeah, they were
crazy.
both real young. And again, he comes from a fighting family, right? Like his brother fights or a cousin, and then his father is a fighter too, I believe, and his
Yeah.
father's the one who trained him early on. So I really like Jordan Mean. He's a local guy. And I'm glad you said you made a play on him because I was actually surprised that this was more or less a pick 'em. I
Yeah.
thought that he would be a minus 150 to minus 170 favorite here.
It
So
might get that high by the time this closes on Saturday. We'll see.
yeah, but I think for the wrong reasons at this point. If it gets that high, I think it's because he's a local kid. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's not really a reason to throw money on him, but I like Jordan Mean. Don't get me wrong. Morono, I believe, is a Taekwondo black belt. He starched Joshua Berkman, lots of low kicks. Countered
He has
Berkman
a
rushing
guillotine too.
in, gave him a guillotine. Yeah, he got him with a guillotine. I wrote that down. Nakamura fight. I think Morono's open for the body kicks. I think Jordan Mean has a good body kick. I think he can really hurt him there. He's comfortable wrestling. Nakamura was taken down twice. So again, Jordan Mean's comfortable wrestling. He was able to get Eric Silva down, who just won last week in LFA, right? Or 2 weeks ago, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So again, there's a lot of reasons to like Jordan Mean. I think he can take the fight in the direction that he wants to. So I'm all over Jordan Mean. I think I'm going to put him in my cash lineup too. I really like the savings on him. I think he's underpriced here.
Okay.
Next fight, I got strong leans all over the place, Mike. So I'm gonna throw it to you first. I want to hear you talk
Sure.
about it before I go. But Alexander Hernandez is 7.9K
Yes.
and OAM is 8.3K. So
Yeah.
what do you like here? This is something
Well,
that could go to decision.
Alexander Hernandez, the new kid on the block who took Benny out, and kind of shocked the MMA world.
Mike, before you even go a little
Yeah.
further, do you remember how that fight started?
Yeah, I remember Benny came out to touch gloves and was met with a kick, I believe. And Hernandez, super aggressive, built like a brick shithouse, young, motivated. But we've heard that he's got great wrestling. What your definition is of great wrestling, I'll leave that up to you. OAM, on the other hand, he is also a young prospect climbing the ladder. He's had a bunch of fights in the UFC. I've actually watched him fight live also a few years ago and take a loss to Carlos Diego Ferreira. Very, very impressive ground game and back taking ability. When I watched tape on OAM, something that taught me a lot was his fight with Drew Dober. Granted, OAM got dropped in the second round, but if he wants to win this fight, somehow, some way, he has to take Hernandez down. We don't know how good this kid is on the ground. If he stands, if OAM, I mean, we've seen he's been getting knockouts recently. If he stands with Hernandez, I don't recommend doing that. Hernandez could take him out, and at 7,900, I see Hernandez being very highly owned. But that being said, OAM has been I've been able to trust him defensively. In his fight with Tony Martin, he turned the tide and did what he had to do. I see the line closing, and it's just about to flip right now. With Hernandez was at -105 last time I checked. I'm actually gonna go with OAM here. I know most of Twitter's on Hernandez, but I feel, I don't want to say confident, but I see OAM somehow, some way grinding this out. If he doesn't get knocked out, I don't see him losing a decision. I don't see OAM losing a decision. What's your take on this fight?
I have a strong lean, and I think OAM is going to win this fight. Again, he's a local kid. I don't know if he's from Calgary. I don't,
Yeah,
he's
I think he's from Montreal.
He's definitely from Canada. He does work out a TriStar with Faraz Zahabi again. He's 7-2 in the UFC, 4 straight wins. Both of his losses are by decision. So again, he hasn't been knocked out in the UFC. And if his losses are by decision, you just said you don't see Hernandez winning a decision.
Right.
One of the other things that I also noticed with Hernandez, I went back and I looked at some of those earlier fights. The one against Dariush, I think it was a fluke. I think he caught Dariush is
he's savvy.
He's savvy, but he's also a martial artist. And when Alexander Hernandez came across the ring, faked the hand tap, because he said yes to the hand tap, and then came across and tried to kick him, I think that threw Dariush off his game. I think it was still in his head when he started that fight. And again, OEM he calls himself the Canadian gangster. And I worked UFC 223. We interviewed him after the fight, and all he wanted to talk about was about his improvements. He was ready for this fight. He knocked Evan Dunham out early. I believe it was with a body shot. But the knees ended the fight early. But he just talked about how he's been working hard, his judo style. He's been working on his striking. He's well-rounded. He's made big improvements. He just wants to keep fighting because of the improvements that he's made. So again, I don't know anybody that fights a TriStar that isn't making improvements, that isn't really working hard. I mean, I just don't think that happens at TriStar. So again, I'm not saying anything bad about Alexander Hernandez other than the fact I really didn't like the way he started that Dariush fight. I think that kind of threw Dariush off. He caught him with that left hand. Don't get me wrong. He's
Oh yeah,
fast. He's physical. But I also don't think his level of competition up until that fight was very good.
he
So
talks a great game too.
yeah, but once you get into the cage, they close that door and you get punched in the face. Now how tough are you?
I'll say this:
And
I wouldn't be surprised if Hernandez did come out and knock OAM out. I that is what a lot of people in DraftKings are going to be banking on.
right.
They saw it. I mean, you want to talk recency bias? That's a perfect example. And if Hernandez somehow comes out flat, gets taken down, ends up on his back, and gets subbed out, we've seen hype trains get derailed before. I tweeted this out earlier that he reminds me of a young Rick Story, and I just want to see what happens when OAM takes him down, and if OAM can't get the takedown though. I know he's worked on his striking, but I think he's in trouble if OAM can't get the takedown.
I think he's going to get the takedown.
But here's the thing too, with OAM, if he does get the takedown, you can see the DraftKings points piling up. So that's an option out there.
Yeah, I think he gets that takedown. I think he clinches up and gets that takedown. I don't think it's going to be much of an issue for him.
Hernandez is going to be highly owned.
Yeah, which I like because I'm really not on him. And I hate to say it, but 5 DraftKings lineups, if everybody else is going to be on him, I think I'd rather just take a play and not play him at all. But that's just my take. Again, I could be completely wrong. Next week, I could eat crow.
Well, you have Stevens at 8,000. You have Mean and Moreno at 8,100, and then you have Hernandez at 7,900. You have OAM at 8,300. So that
you have Aldo too, 8.2.
Yep, Jose Aldo right there. So that middle of the road. If you end up making the right choices there, that might be where the money's at.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next 3 fights. This is what everyone's tuning in for. And again, it's great that it's a free card on Fox. We get the return of Joanna after the 2 straight losses to Rose. Joanna at UFC 223 post-fight press conference really thought that she won that fight. I don't know if you watched that. I was sitting in the room, but she said, "I'm not done at 115." She knows at 125. And again, the weight cuts are tough for her. The first Rose fight, she put out that picture of her basically in the tub, having a real tough time, getting herself down to 115. But she said, "I'm not ready for 125 yet." She thinks she's going to be able to make another run for another title belt. I think she's going to have to win 3 or 4 fights before she fights Rose again, if Rose still has it. But she's 9.2K here. Tisha Torres is 7K. And for the most part, a lot of people try to take Joanna down or try to in the past. Rose just went for the striking game and outstruck her. Tisha Torres, she does have very quick hands. She counters. A lot of her punches are pretty predictable. If you watch them on film, it's usually a 1-2. It's usually a left-right,
she's
right.
She's gonna have to close distance here.
Yeah, and again, for 2 reasons. Number one, she needs to get inside to strike because Joanna's gonna have a 4.5-inch reach advantage and a 5-inch height advantage. So you're talking about someone who's a world-class striker. I think this is going to be a Joanna decision. I think Tisha's going to try to mix it up, but I don't think – I mean, every time she's fought the better competition, Tisha's lost to Rose. She's lost to Andrade. She uses her jab, but, again, what is her jab going to do against Joanna when she has a 5-inch reach advantage? I don't think it's going to be as effective. The right hand could – if the right hand connects, she can do some damage.
Yeah, it's a 3-round fight, and I was on Andrade during the fight with Torres, and Tisha impressed me. I've even the transformation of her physique over the last few fights has been dramatic. I was watching her at the scrum today, and she even looks bigger than last time. I don't know how she's able to maintain such muscle mass. It's incredible. This is a 3-round fight. Joanna could stay at distance and just pepper Tisha up, but Tisha's got to know this is coming. How many times have we seen this play out? Letourneau, so many fighters have Carolina. So many other fighters have just been kept at bay, and then in the later rounds, it's an accumulation of strikes, and it ends up taking a toll on Joanna's opponents. I have a hunch that Tisha's going to make this a fight somehow, some way. Tisha's plus 250. I understand the confidence in Joanna by a lot of people, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tisha Torres puts up a hell of a fight here. The thing that in some respects scares me off of Torres is I know in Jacek you are going to get a plus effort out of her every single time. She doesn't give up on herself, and that's something in DraftKings you want. You don't want somebody who's going to come out flat, and haven't seen her come out flat before.
I don't know if you watched the face-offs today, the same one I did, but she kind of got in Torres's face.
Yeah,
at that
I did see that,
and I think she tried that with Rose, and Rose handles things in a different way, but she kind of looked intimidated. She looked like she's ready to throw down. What I mean? I like Joanna a lot. Now, if you want to talk DraftKings, 9.2K. I don't know if 9.2K is worth playing. I mean, if you want to play it in cash, that's fine.
Traditionally,
but in GPP,
and Jacek has put up big points. But when was the last time we saw her in a 3-round fight?
Well, that's what I was going to say. A lot of those people were expecting 100, 115 points based on strikes, the accumulation of 5 rounds of strikes.
She's going to have to get started quickly.
Yeah, I just don't know. And again, I think Tisha's going to bring her A game, but other than that 1-2 left right moving, quick hands, strength, is she going to use the strength to go for takedowns? Because that seems like what everybody tries to do against Joanna, and it's never worked. The person who beat her was the person who outstruck her. That's the person who beat her.
Well, footwork should win this fight as well. We'll see.
So we get to this next fight here, and I don't know if you saw, Bloody Elbow had a quote today by Jose Aldo. So Jose Aldo is 8.2K. Jeremy Stevens is 8K. Literally 15 minutes. One of the reasons why we probably didn't get on at 9 o'clock right on the money today. I did spend a few minutes reading that Bloody Elbow quote. And Aldo basically says he has 3 fights left on his contract, and he doesn't see himself re-signing or fighting after that. For someone to make a comment like that, like Jose Aldo, that's a little alarming. Now, don't get me wrong. I really like Jeremy Stevens in this spot. I think Aldo is the better striker. He's the better all-around fighter. He has the better BJJ game, but he doesn't really use it in the fights that I've seen recently. Again, against the Holloway fights, just haven't seen it. Aldo's taken a lot of punishment. He's taken a lot of punishment in the gym and in his fights.
Yeah, it's amazing too. Stevens has more fights than Aldo, and Stevens is actually older than Aldo.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot more fights than Aldo. It's interesting.
Don't get me wrong. Aldo may not be 31 years old.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't know if he's 31 years old.
That's true. That may be the case.
Because if you saw him today, I was watching Eddie Alvarez actually went live on Instagram, so I was watching his Instagram video. Aldo
his eyes old. Don't look right. Yeah. Something looks
old,
different.
Man. He looks old.
He's a dynamic striker. He has so much athletic ability, and his body just won't at least in the two Holloway fights, his body just wouldn't do what his mind wanted it to do, and you could see that happening. Man, if Stevens is going to pull it off against Aldo, this is the time for something like that to happen. From a DraftKings perspective, I'm concerned though, because Aldo, he's got to know that Stevens has big power, and he's going to try to avoid that at all costs. So I don't see Stevens landing a lot on him, and if he doesn't get a first or second round knockout, I don't see Stevens winning a decision against Aldo. He has to get a finish if he's going to win, at least from my perspective. I could see Aldo getting the finish. I could see Aldo winning a decision here. But does he have the evasiveness of a Moicano? Stevens has been frustrated when he loses. He's been frustrated when he lost to Edgar, when he lost a few other fights. He was actually losing his fight against Dennis Bermudez. And then out of nowhere, that the Josh Emmett fight, the Dooho Choi fight, he just unloads, and it's like a ferocious barrage of strikes. I actually think Stevens is going to pull this off somehow, just because he's got the momentum. He's the hungrier fighter. He's sustained less brain trauma, and man, I think we're going to see a brutal knockout by Jeremy Stevens here. What's your take?
I hate to say it, but I think we've agreed on 12 fights in a row here. So I don't know people tuning in. I maybe that's a good thing.
I apologize.
I just think I think everything is very, very clear to me on this card. I think Jose Aldo can win a decision. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think Jeremy Stevens is going to find a way to knock him out. And again, if you, as a betting man, if you want to play Jeremy Stevens, I believe the Jeremy Stevens odds right now is basically a pick 'em. I think he's at even money. He was 110. He was even. He was back to 110. But fight doesn't go to decision is plus 125. So you're better off playing fight doesn't go to decision than playing Jeremy Stevens, because if he wins the fight, he's going to win by knockout.
Excellent point, Steven.
You're basically playing Jeremy Stevens there. And then again, if Jose Aldo does knock him out or do anything crazy there, so that's the play if you believe in Stevens like we do right there. I feel like I'm giving the same analysis that I did last week with Corey Anderson. Every time Jeremy Stevens has stepped up in competition, he hasn't been able to get the job done. He lost to Max Holloway, lost to Frankie Edgar, lost to Renato Moicano, who I think Moicano is very, very good. If he doesn't fly in for that sub attempt against
Ortega,
I mean he's top 3, top 2 maybe at this point. So Stevens has stepped up and hasn't been able to do it. Corey Anderson did it last week. I think Stevens can get this done. I just have a hunch that Stevens is going to be able to do it. Aldo's taken a lot of punishment in his last few fights. Against Conor McGregor, obviously got knocked out, had no idea what the hell was going on. Against Holloway, he looked very good for 2 rounds. And if he looks that good against Stevens for 2 rounds, he probably wins maybe a split decision or a unanimous decision. But that second Holloway fight, he looked a little slow. Holloway was beating him to the punch. Holloway was kind of toying around with him at that point.
Yeah.
In that second
fight.
Yeah,
he also, the footwork was huge for Holloway. Like you could see that that Aldo was trying to get away from him, and he couldn't. Holloway was right there in front of him at all times, throwing punches to the body. Man, so this is gonna be a good fight.
It's going to be a great fight. And again, I even wrote on the top of my paper, Max Holloway is a beast. I just want to see him fight again. He's one of my favorite fighters. I love watching that guy fight. But yeah, it's a tough one. But I like Jeremy Stevens.
How do you like the price? 8,200 versus 8,000.
I'll be honest with you. I thought that when these fights were announced, I was shocked to see Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier weren't kind of priced similarly. I'm surprised that the Poirier went up to like minus 170. The first time I saw it, Poirier was minus 170. I was shocked. I figured both fights would be more or less a pick 'em. Mm-hmm. So, I think the price is right. to be honest with you.
Okay. All
But
right.
we'll
Then
get
we have
into
the
this. Yeah, we'll
main
get into
event
the main
coming up.
event. What do you think about this one? I'll be honest with you. I think Poirier is going to win the fight. I
Yeah.
was on Poirier, and when I saw this price, I'm like, I just don't like the price. But what do you think?
Yeah. Earlier, about a month ago, when it was about minus 150, minus 140 for Poirier, it seemed more appetizing. You got to wonder how the Gaethje fight affected Poirier. It seems to me like it's a quick turnaround. So it's risky, and Alvarez looks fresh. He was super motivated. You're gonna have to kill him to beat him, basically. Alvarez, he takes big risks. Even when he looks hurt, he's still dangerous. You remember the Mendez jury fight and how that ended up finishing?
I don't remember.
So Mendez fainted and almost came up like he was going to throw, I believe, a right hand, and then stepped to close the distance.
Yes.
Threw a left
2 weeks
hand.
ago, yes.
For some reason, I'm picking Poirier here, but he's my preferred play. But I could see Alvarez pulling off something of that nature later in the fight, when and if Poirier's eyes swell shut. We'll see. The first fight was telling, though, to see how Poirier was able to just gauge distance, and his accuracy was so impressive. And he was winning the fight convincingly until Alvarez landed those illegal knees, and Poirier also. I mean, he knew, you could see how the confidence was building for him. He was trying to get Alvarez out of there. Alvarez was on Queer Street, and he just wouldn't go out. I was talking to the people who I was watching the fight with. I was like, how, like the human brain, and how is he staying conscious? It was pretty incredible to watch that. And then I went back. I remember Robin Black talking about just the survival instincts of Eddie Alvarez and how impressive they are. So
even against Conor McGregor, the stuff that Conor McGregor hit him with.
Yeah, he gets wobbled, but Poirier. This is the other thing about the Gaethje fight. His confidence is through the roof now. He's going to come in there with a chip on his shoulder, and Alvarez has been broken before mentally. I could see that happening in this fight, and that's why I'm picking Poirier, but I could see someone winning a big GPP with Alvarez on the winning lineup.
Yeah, again, I think Poirier is going to win the fight. I just have a feeling I have a feeling for the Jeremy Stephens fight, and I have a feeling for this Eddie Alvarez fight. I just have a feeling that he's gonna catch him. And again,
Alvarez is going to catch Poirier.
That's my feeling. Yeah. That's my and again, I bet
always
Alvarez.
A possibility.
I threw something on Alvarez by KO TKO. I just have a feeling. And again, Alvarez hasn't fought in 2018. He's taken care of his body. He was in a war with Poirier. He was in a war with Gaethje. And then he hasn't fought in 2018. Whereas Poirier was in a war with, just go back. Conor McGregor was in a war with Alvarez.
Even the Pettis fight was a tough fight.
He beat him pretty convincingly, but, he got hit a little bit. Go back to Poirier. Go back to the Jim Miller fight. We were at that fight.
Yes.
Right? He couldn't stand at the end of that fight. Yeah. The leg kicks just ate him alive.
Well, that's one thing. Apparently, I met Damian Brown. He responded to me and said that he doesn't suspect that it's in Eddie Alvarez's arsenal to implement those leg kicks. So,
and again, I watched the first fight again. Again, if you want to get excited for this card, go back and watch the first fight. Just watch the second round. If you don't get excited for this card after watching that second round, I'd be shocked. But Eddie Alvarez didn't throw a leg kick until probably 2 minutes into that fight. And again, if it's not in his repertoire, then I'm a little concerned for Eddie Alvarez. I think he needs to put that in his repertoire. I think he needs to use his wrestling. And again, Eddie Alvarez, think about the guys that he works out with. He works out with Barbosa, who, we just found out left to ATT, Frankie Edgar. You're going to tell me he can't put more wrestling into his repertoire? I know Poirier's, I believe, is a BJJ black belt, right, from ATT. My other concern with Alvarez is I don't know if he's comfortable against southpaws. He didn't seem comfortable against McGregor. He didn't seem comfortable against Poirier. That's my one concern against Alvarez. So, but again, if you attack Poirier's legs, Gaethje, if you go back to that Gaethje fight, I didn't think Poirier was even going to be able to come out in the fourth round. Nonetheless, knock him out like that.
Yeah. I personally think he's taking this fight about 2 or 3 months too soon, but hey, fighters fight, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think his last fight was in April, right? It was in between 223 in Atlantic City, so I think it was that second week of April.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a guy coming back 3 months later who could barely walk at the end of that fight. And again, from what people say, and my buddy Andrew, who rolls BJJ and everything, he's trying to get an MMA fight. He basically said, like, those nerves in your leg, when they get kicked over and over again, they need time to recover. And again, you start kicking those legs again and affecting those nerves, and he could be on dicey footing real early in this fight. But that's I think Poirier is going to win this fight, but Eddie Alvarez, I just have a feeling. So, Mike, anything else you're working on? What anything else you want to plug or promote?
Well, you can. I'm not a big self-promoter, but I am on Twitter at Mike's MMA Picks, and I'm just grateful to be able to break down this card with you and talk Draftkings and some plays. And I thank you for continuing with the podcast, and excited about the future and what it may hold for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm here for the long haul, and again, hopefully some of this break. I've had a couple people over the last few weeks hit me up on Twitter. People that I don't even know. I didn't even know that they were listening to the show. Say, thanks for the breakdown. I was able to win this. I was able to win, and you had a nice win last week, right?
Yes. Yeah. What? About $700,
$12,
right? On the card last week, my main cash lineup put up 597.5 points, and I placed first in the DFS MMA Championship League, and got a long way to go.
Yeah, hopefully some people use these plays. I'm just glad that we were in agreement with most of these fights today. So hopefully I'll do better this week. I really crapped out last week.
Well, it's a marathon.
All right, Mike, have a good one. Yeah, enjoy the week, and hopefully we'll get back at it for a big UFC event over in Anaheim in 2 weeks.
Enjoy the card, everybody.